It's time for the Christmas calendar, the React Christmas calendar, and this is the third iteration of my calendar, and I add in more stuff each time. So this time I've added in some more stuff for you and made it kind of an advanced calendar this year. And I'm a little bit late because we should have been starting with this calendar some days ago, but I have a lot to do now, and I'm actually pretty surprised that I could squeeze this in myself. So this is it. No, nothing more to say. As usual, subscribe to my channel if you like my stuff and tell the world about it because I need your support. Otherwise, we're gonna get started now. All right, let's start this tutorial. The first thing you have to do is to download the starter files. I provided a link down below this video to the GitHub repository where you can download them. So go inside of that folder that you download that is marked with start here, run npm install, and then type in npm run dev, and that will start up this Vite configuration that I've created for you. And I'm going to go inside my code editor now, and you can see that I provided with some files. This is a pretty standard installation, a standard setup. So you have the main file here that wraps the app with the React strict mode. We have the app component itself, and here we're going to do a lot of stuff inside of here. And the most important stuff that I want to talk about now for you is that I provide you with the images. We have the backside of the hatch, so to say, this image, and then I provided you with some images somewhere up here, the IMG folder. These are the images for all the different hatches that I provided for you, and also this helpers.ts. So what I've got inside of this file is a shuffle function that I found some years ago, I think now on Stack Overflow, so I'm still sticking with this one. I have created a type for each hatch. So we're going to have a number, the hatch number. Some of you have calendars that are actually 25 hatches, but here in Sweden we have 24 of them. So we're going to have the image, the URL to the image, and we're going to have the text. That's going to be some bad one-liners that I found here. I marked it here for you if you want to go there. As this is the third iteration, I probably should have changed these ones here, but to be honest, I don't have much time to do this tutorial, but I want to squeeze it in because I want to do this. It's fun and I want to show you this stuff. And the last thing in the type here is the open, and that's a boolean that's going to tell us if this hatch is open or not. So you can see the structure here. It's an array with different objects here, one object for each hatch. So we have the number, we have the URL, and that's the URL inside of the IMG folder here. When this application is built, it will go inside of that folder and grab that image that I named them with the hatch number here also. And then you have the text, and then open is going to start at false because we don't want any hatch to be open when we start the application. And then I export this function, create calendar, that is going to run the shuffle function on this array here, and we will get an array with shuffled hatches. So that's what I provided for you. Please look around in the files and try to understand them before you start with this tutorial. Because I'm going to start now inside of the app.tsx file, and we're going to do some stuff here. So the first thing I'm going to do is to actually create some state with all the hatches. I'm already importing the hatch. This one is just, you can see it's an empty component now. And as you can see here, it complains now because it wants some props that I'm going to talk about later. Because if we look inside of the styles, I have some props. I typed them here. So we're going to talk about these props when we reach that point. But for now, let's be in the app.tsx file. And I'm importing the hatch, and I'm importing the hatch type and the create calendar from the helpers file that I showed you. We have this create calendar function here that I export, and that one is going to shuffle the array with hatches and give us a shuffled array with hatches, obviously. And then I have the type for the hatch. So that's what I'm also going to import here because I need that one in the component. And then I have the styles, some global styles. I'm setting the backdrop here. So if you start up the application, you can see that I have this image. All these images are grabbed from Unsplash. And it just says start here, up here. So we're going to change this into something useful very soon. So that's where I set this background, and I also have a styled app that's going to be a responsive grid with all the hatches. All right. So inside of the app component here somewhere, I'm going to create a new state, const hatches, set hatches, and we have react.useState, and we're going to fill it with something. And for now, we're going to call the create calendar function. Be very careful. So you also have these double parentheses. So you actually call the function, and that will populate the state with the hatches. All right. We can also set the type on this one. You can see that it's any now. It doesn't know what type it is. So we can specify this type. So we do that inside of these angle brackets here. And we have the hatch type that we imported, but it's an array. So we also specify it as an array. And now if we hover over here, you can see that it's a hatch type. All right. The create calendar, we could also, of course, specify here the return type could be of hatch type like this. Save it, go back to the app.tsx, and then we don't need to specify it here because it will know the type automatically. But sometimes it's also good to be explicit. We can see instantly here that this is an array of the type hatch type. So even if you don't need to do stuff sometimes, it's good to have them there to clarify stuff. All right, so this will give us the array with hatches, and then we can loop through them here. And this is also the global style that I created in the app.styles here. So this is how you use a global style with style components. I have a lot of videos on style components in my channel. So if you don't know how this stuff works, I suggest that you go through my videos and I will explain it in another video for you. So we're going to map through the hatches here. So hatches.map. We have a hatch, an arrow function. We can make an implicit return, so I have parentheses. Then we have the hatch component. As we're mapping through stuff in React, we need to have a key, and the hatch.number is going to be unique. We have the hatch data, and we send in a hatch. We could also just call it hatch if we want to do that. Handle click. It's going to be a function that we're going to create that we call handle click hatch. Later, we're going to add in a prop here. That's going to be the addition to this year's calendar. And that's going to be that we're only going to enable those hatches that actually are valid to open on the current date. So we're going to add that in later. All right. For now, we can create an empty function. Const handle click hatch equal. You can just console log out click. And it doesn't seem that it's named hatch data. I'm going to see here on the component. No, because we haven't created any props for this yet. So we have to specify those props. And I think I'm actually just going to call it hatch. So hatch and handle click. So go inside the components folder and the hatch. So first we're going to create the type for the props. So type props. You could also use an interface if you want to do that. I usually type my props with type, and also the name is going to be props. You don't need to name it props. You can have whatever name you want. So hatch is going to be of the type hatch type. So that's why I imported that one up here. And this one is not an array because this is the individual hatches. So it's only going to be of the type hatch type, no array. And then we have the handle click. And that one is going to be a function that takes in a number. That's going to be the hatch number, and it's going to return void. It returns nothing. So that's why. And then we're going to add in that other prop later, as I talked about before. And now we need to specify these props. So we have angle brackets here. Just after the react.fc, that stands for a functional component. That's one way of typing a functional component in React, and probably the easiest way because this is the type that's built into React. So I have angle brackets and props. And then we can destructure out the props. So I have curly brackets. So we have the hatch. And we can destructure it out even further. So I have colon and angle brackets again. We're going to have the number, the text, the IMG, and open. And these are all the props from the object here, as you can see in the helpers file from the array. So I destructure out them one more time here. And then we have the handle click like this. And hopefully this one will stop complaining now. Yes. But we have to do something with this wrapper because this one is complaining now because I've specified in my types that this one needs 3 different props, open, background, and enabled. So I have to specify this also, otherwise it will complain. So open, we're going to pass along the open prop. The background is going to be the IMG prop. Enabled, we're going to set this one to true for now, and then we're going to change it later. And now you can see that it stops complaining. And also these styles, I'm not going to go into detail of on how I style this one. I also have a lot of videos on how you style stuff in your applications. So I'm not going to do that here. So you can check these style files that I provided for you if you're more interested in that. All right, and then we're just typing out hatch. We're not going to do that. We're going to have a div with a class name that I already specified in my style file that is called front. And then I have a p tag, and I'm going to specify the number of the hatch. Then we have the back, so we have another div with a class name, back, and another p tag that will give us the text. So the front is going to have the number, and when the user clicks on it, we're going to turn it around and show the text. That little, probably really bad one-liner. It's not even funny, I think. But we have one more thing that we need here, and that's on the wrapper for the hatch. We're going to have an on-click handler, so we pass along this handle click. But this one, as we specified up here, it's a function that takes in the number. So we're also going to send along the number. So I create an empty arrow function, call the handle click with the number, like this. So every time you click on this specific hatch, we will send along the hatch number, and this function will receive that number so we can do something with that specific hatch. All right, so let's go back to the app component. Make sure to save everything. I usually forget about that. You can see that we have all the hatches here. We can't really do something. You can see that we console log out click when we click on the different hatches. And if we reload it, you can see that it's a different board. It's a different calendar because it's random. So that seems to be working pretty well, but we want to turn these hatches also when we click on them. So let's remove this console log here from the handle click hatch. As we specified before, we take in the number of the hatch. So we have to specify that here also. Then we're going to set the hatches. We're going to set the state. We have the previous state. And we're going to map through that state. There are many ways to do this. And you could do it so you don't have to map through the complete array in a different way. But this is a very small application. So it's fine to map through them all to try to find a specific hatch and do something. So we have the previous, all the hatches in the array. We map it. We have a hatch, an arrow function, parenthesis. I'm going to check if the hatch.number equals the number. So the hatch.number is the specific hatch that we're on in the iteration. And then we have the number that when we click on this hatch, we send in the number. So when those are equal, we know that we have found the correct hatch in the array. And then I have a turner operator, question mark, and I will return an object, the hatch object. I spread out the hatch, the complete hatch object first, and then I'm going to change the open prop. I have an exclamation mark, and I change the hatch open, and this will turn it around. If it's true, it's going to be false. If it's false, it's going to be true. And then if we haven't found the correct hatch, we just return the hatch as it is. So hopefully this will work. Save it, go back. And you can see that we can turn these hatches now. So it works pretty well. And this little flip that I do here, it's all made with CSS. So you can check the style for the hatch if you want to know how that one is made. All right, so we have pretty much the calendar now, but let's say that we want to save the state. You have turned this one, and maybe today it's the third, I think, or no, it's the second actually. And yeah, we turned this to here. It's the 2nd of December today. So, but next time when you load this application, it will be reset because the state is reset. So we also want to save this state in the local storage. So what we're going to do here first, when we set the initial state, we're just calling this create calendar now. We're going to check the local storage dot. We're going to have a property that's called calendar that we're going to create. So local storage dot calendar. We have a turner operator. If that one is true, it means that it has found something in the local storage that's called calendar. So then we run JSON parse local storage dot calendar. So we have to parse it back to JSON because you can only save strings in the local storage. Yeah, I misspelled that one. Like that. So if we find something in the local storage, we will grab that and parse it back to JSON. Otherwise, we call our function here. We grab it from the local storage or we create a new state. But we're only grabbing it. We're not saving anything. So each time we click a hatch, we want to save it to local storage. Store calendar in local storage. All right. So I'm going to create a React.useEffect for this one. We have an inline arrow function. Then we have the dependency array. So local storage dot set item. We have the item that's going to be called calendar. Very important that this one is the same as up here, because you decide what you want this to be called, and I want it to be called calendar. Then we stringify our state, JSON stringify, and we have our hatches like this. And we need to specify the hatches here. So every time the hatches change, we're going to save this to local storage. That is what this useEffect does. Save it, go back to our application, reload it just in case. I'm going to turn some hatches here, and then I'm going to reload it. And you can see that they are kept now. When we reload the application, it will grab it from local storage, and we can check here in application, local storage. We have the calendar here. Down here are all the hatches as a string. So that's what we parse back later to a JSON object. And we could use it in our application. So that's pretty much it. This is the previous version of the calendar. I didn't do anything more, but now I want to add in some other stuff. And I want to be able to stop the user from actually clicking a hatch if that date isn't here yet. So I can't, for example, click on the 5th of December because it's only the 2nd of December today. So I want to stop the user from doing that, to kind of cheat and open it before you should open it. So I go back to my code editor, and I'm going to create a new function here. Just below the handle click hatch, const is hatch enabled. It's going to take in a number also. And it's going to return a Boolean. We can also, if we want to be explicit here, specify that this will return void. Then you see instantly that this function won't return anything. So it's always good to be extra specific with things. If it doesn't clutter your code, of course. Okay, we have curly brackets, and now it will complain because we're not returning a Boolean. So we have to fix that. And this is going to work like this. I'm going to check the date, the day, month, and year, and I'm going to compare our hatch against that. So first, I'm going to create a new date. And we have a built-in date object in JavaScript, or in TypeScript, as we're in now. But it's going to be JavaScript in the end. So new date is going to give us a new date. Then I have a const day. So from the date, we have something get UTC date. That will give us the specific day in the month. Then we have the month, const month, date dot get month. And that will give us the month. But be very careful here, because starts with 0, meaning that 11 equals December, because we want to check December. And as it starts with 0, December is going to be number 11. And we have the year, const year from date dot get full year. So these are very neat to use. We already have these methods on the date object. All right, so we have all the data here, hopefully. And first I want to check if someone goes to this calendar next year, for example, 2022, it's 2021 now. So if year is greater than 2021, we're going to return true. Then we enable all of the hatches, because it's the year. If we're in 2022, there's no use to actually block the user from clicking all the hatches. So when 2021 has passed, we will open up all the hatches for the user. Otherwise, if we have the month, if that one is equal to 11, we know that it's December, and the number, we're going to send in the hatch number here to check if the hatch is enabled. The number should be less or equal to the day. And then we return true. Otherwise, we return false, like this. All right? So if the month is December, and if the number of the hatch that you click is below the day's date, or equal to the day's date, we will allow the user to click it and open it. And this is pretty much it. It should do the trick. So I'm going to add a prop here on the hatch, enabled callback, is hatch enabled. So I'm just sending in the callback here, and I'm going to talk about in a minute or so why I do that, because I could also call this one here and calculate the value here and send it in by prop, but that means that when it re-renders, it will run this on all the hatches, and it's no problem now in this small application, but I want to show you how to optimize stuff in a few minutes here. I'm not invoking it here, so I'm just sending in the function. I'm going to invoke it in the hatch component. So go inside of the hatch component. We're going to add in that prop, enabled callback, and that one is going to be of the type number, just as the other one, but we're going to return a boolean for this one instead of void. So here we're actually returning something here. And then with the structure out it here, enabled callback, so we can use it inside of the component. And then we're just setting this to true now. Instead, we're going to calculate it. So inside here, enable callback, and we send in the number. And you can see here also, if we didn't send in the number, Typescript will complain, expected 1 argument, but got 0. So this is pretty neat with Typescript. It will always warn you if you do something wrong. But in our case, we didn't do anything wrong because we sent it in here. And you can see that I invoke this function here. So that is fine. We should invoke it here because we calculate here when we render this component if it should be enabled or not. All right, save it. And the other file is saved also. Go back to the application, reload it. Let's see if I click some other hatch here. I can't open them, but the number 1, I can open the number 1 and 2 because it's the 2nd of December today when I record this. So it's working great. You can't cheat now. You can't open the hatches before the actual date. And that's pretty neat. And there's one little more thing that I want to show you, because if we do something like this inside here, curly brackets, because I'm inside the JSX. So I'm going to console log re-render, and I'm going to show you here. Every time I click, you can see that it re-renders all of the hatches, and that's fine for this small application, but I'm going to show you how to optimize it with some callbacks and memoization. So go back to the code. The first thing we have to do with the hatch here is to wrap this one in a React.memo. And you may think, yeah, this will work, but no, it won't work. It will still re-render all of them. And that is because if we look in the app here, these components are recreated on each render. We have the handle click hatch, and we have the isHatch enabled. So what we can do here is we can wrap them inside of a useCallback. So up here, React.useCallback. I like to do it like this nowadays. I didn't do that before. You can destructure them out up here also if you want to use callback. But I usually type in React.use and the hook that I use like this now. Okay, so we have a parenthesis, and down here we have a comma. We have the dependency array and the parenthesis, and we don't actually have any dependency here because we're using the previous state inside of this set hatches here. So that is fine. And you may think, yeah, this is enough, so it should work. Something at least should have changed, but no, we're still re-rendering all the hatches. And that is because we have the other function is hatch enabled. This one will get recreated on each render. So this hatch component think that, oh, this is a new prop, so I have to re-render this component. So we have to wrap this one also inside a React.useCallback, parenthesis, and down below here, comma, and the dependency array. And we don't actually have any external dependencies here also because we're creating the date inside here and we're sending in the number here. So we're not depending on anything outside of this function. So we don't need to have anything in this dependency array. Save it, go back to the application, reload it just in case. And when I click here now, you can see that it only re-renders the hatch that it actually clicks on. So this is how you optimize a React application to not re-render everything. But it's fine actually in this small application, and I wouldn't go so far to actually optimize this, I think, if it was a real application, because I think it clutters your code a little bit to have this use callbacks all over the code. This is fine actually here, React Memo, because you can just put it down below here and you won't even notice it probably. But yeah, imagine that you have a lot of these here, and yeah, it can be a little bit ugly, I think. But this is how you optimize it, and you only render the hatch that you actually click on. And this will actually conclude this year's advent calendar in React with TypeScript and optimization and stuff like that. Hope you enjoy this one, and if you like my stuff, please subscribe and see you in another one.